It's on. Is it on now? That's better. Okay. We gather to worship, our hearts alive with hope that here we will be truly seen, that here we will be welcomed into the garden of this community, where the simple and the elegant, the fluted and the frilled, the shy and the dramatic complement one another and are treasured. May we know that here each contributes in their way to the beauty of the whole. Come, let us worship together, all genders, sexualities, politics, clappers and non-clappers, progressive or conservative. May we root ourselves in the values of this faith, compassion and courage, transcendence, justice, and transformation. Welcome to First Parish in Milton. My name is Lisa White, and I'm the worship assistant this morning for Carol Stalker, who will be speaking about finding the spirit in the garden. And a special welcome this morning to Dayon Drisdom, who's playing the piano for us, and to Holden and Sophia, who are our audio techs this morning. Holden is Susan Domenico's son, and he's starting as an audio tech for us, which is great. And to anyone who's here for the first time, a very warm welcome. However your journey, whatever your heritage, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. There should be information about First Parish in your pew rack, and after the service, any of us would be happy to answer any questions you might have. And is anybody having trouble hearing at all? Everyone's good? Okay. And if you haven't already, if you could please silence your cell phones, we'd appreciate it. Worship can take place both inside and outside the meeting house. Church projects and activities are listed in the link, which comes out via email on Thursdays. Now, as most of you know, our lay-led services are a little different from minister-led services during the rest of the year. They're an hour earlier, as all of you who are here know, and those who show up at 10:30 might need to be reminded of. They're often shorter, and the lay leader is often sharing something that they care a lot about, or sharing something of themselves that's quite personal. So this is a way that we get to know each other in a different and maybe deeper way, and it's a way that we can grow together as a community. Now, please rise as you're able and join in singing hymn number 38 in the gray hymnal, and I just realized they're not up there. I forgot to change them. So disregard those numbers. It's 38 in the gray hymnal. of Unitarian Universalism. Let it remind us of the warmth of our community and the hope that we share together. We can make the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but also for others. And if you would join me in the call to worship, it's number 1 on the laminated card that's in your pew. Come, let us gather together. Oh, I always do that. Let's start over. Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We strive to practice acceptance for... I obviously have the wrong text here, and I know it by heart, but continue. You guys finish. Sorry, okay. All right, now I would like to invite Carol Stalker up to do her sermon, The Spirit in the Garden.
Especially since I look out and I see so many friends who have come to support me. And I'm just thrilled. I'm not over-prepared, but I'm thrilled. I love the excitement of not knowing what you're going to say and just launching forward. Okay. One reason I'm not prepared is because that's my personality, and also I was on a garden tour yesterday. This was for the Forbes House Museum, and they called me, and a couple of people had dropped out, and so at the last minute, my husband went out and spent a week cutting down the dead things and the winter damage. And it's kind of like picking up your house before a party. It's all about neatening up. And that took a lot of time. And it was very sunny until the garden tour, when it rained for 3 hours, which was the only time it will rain in the coming week, is just the 3 hours of the garden tour. And we knew that was going to happen because that's what happens with gardening. It never works out the way you think it's going to. You know, you think, oh, this pink peony or this pink poppy and this blue iris will look so good together. And then when they bloom a week apart, so you never see them at the same time. And everything is basically, you think you're kind of star-crossed, that everything you try to do, the squirrels eat your tomatoes, that you're just thwarted. But it's a spiritual lesson in going with the flow and making lemonade out of lemons, because you can't control what's going to happen. If you have a garden tour, it will rain during the garden tour. And that's okay, because what happened was that the hummingbirds were very cold and hungry because the nectar wasn't flowing. So there were hummingbirds everywhere. From the whole neighborhood, all the hummingbirds came to our feeders. And I would take the children in the rain and show them the hummingbirds. And it's like the glass could be half empty or half full. So you have to find out where the glass is half full. It's like, oh, it's cold and rainy, but we have hummingbirds. So it was very successful. I couldn't believe that there was like 100 people wandering in my garden in the rain. They must have been dedicated. It was a classic kind of garden lesson. When people come to, and then afterwards, they had little pictures on their cell phones, and they say, what's this? What's this? What's this? They photographed everything they wanted to know about. I feel as though people, a lot of people come to see my garden, and I think most of them don't get it, or don't get it very much. And they tend to be the people who like lawns and neatness, because it's kind of a wildlife garden with, and it's deliberately messy because birds like mess. And I hate lawns. So if that's what you like, you don't like this garden. And but there's a lot of people that do get it, which tend to be the ones that like nature. Everybody brings a different set of values into the garden with them. It's just like if someone comes into your home, maybe they love modernism and they think you need to update, or maybe they like old Victorians and they think you're just right. So, it's kind of a Rorschach's test of individual people's taste, and I don't care because it's all about my taste. So that's what my garden is like. It's an old, and Robert Muzzy does all the work, so I should say our garden. It started as it's a wildlife garden. It's a 150-year-old farmhouse. It's got a lot of old farm stuff that we curate, like an old apple orchard and rhubarb patch and Concord grape arbor. And the house is quite small, and we're surrounded by millionaires' McMansions that are popping up every time a house changes hands. They tear down the house that was there because it's too small, and they put in a big lawn with a big mansion. And so this garden and this house have been there since 1845, and they probably have about 5 years to go, because that's about how much longer we're going to live there before we start to fall apart, and I don't think it will survive us, unless we were rich enough to endow it or give it away to somebody who would be nice to it. So there you go. It started as an obsessive reaction to writing about the nuclear arms race. Well, during the nuclear freeze movement in the early 80s, during the Reagan years. And I was terrified that we were all going to die. I really thought that we were going to get into a nuclear war with the cruise missiles. And I wrote about it, hung out about a lot with Helen Caldecott back in those days, who basically went around telling everybody that we were all going to die and scaring a lot of people, including me. So that's what drove me into gardening, because when you are burned out or depressed, I think you naturally, one way you try to save yourself and get back to the glass that's half full is you have a child, or you train a puppy, or you make music, or you embrace gardening. You have to do something that is generative to pull yourself out of being depressed. And so my garden was a reaction to the nuclear arms race, literally, and my view of onrushing Armageddon. So that's where it came from. And let's see, I don't know how I'm doing on time here. Not bad. So we became the curators of this old farm from a safer, simpler time. We weren't interested in modernizing it. We wanted to retreat to this pre-nuclear, earlier era. And my husband is a museum conservator. And so this was our retreat. It was an escape. We added ornamental gardens, and at times I actually unbelievably gradually segued from being a Boston Globe reporter who wrote about AIDS and the arms race and all the depressing things in the world to becoming a professional garden writer, writing a column for the Boston Globe that I just retired from last year. In that sense, I was doing what Joseph Campbell used to say about following your bliss. And so I not only found a hobby in my garden, and I not only found a spiritual and emotional retreat and sustenance in my garden, but It rescued my peace of mind. I found a new career in gardening. Another reporter at the Boston Globe told me I had the best job at the Boston Globe. I mean, the Boston Globe is guaranteed to just basically drive you crazy. And all these people were thinking about slitting their wrists, and they look at me, and I was getting the same salary as them for writing about gardening. And they said, how did she manage that? So my gardening obsession really threw me a rescue line when I was about ready to burn out after 30 years as a full-time newspaper reporter writing about very depressing things. So it's really been a blessing in my life in a strange way, and it shows how, I don't know. I actually went to a career counselor at one point and said, I'm burning out, what do I do? And and I took a bunch of tests, and she said to me, you should be a garden writer. And I thought it was the stupidest suggestion I ever got, and I had wasted my money. But those tests can be good. So there's something fated about it. Now that I'm retired, I still work in the garden. It continues to help me evolve, and I help it to evolve, and it becomes more and more about nurturing wildlife and less about the pretty red flowers that I was growing in the beginning. It started as an escape from post-nuclear anxiety, and these days it is an escape from anxiety about global warming. In other words, I still think the world is going to end. It's just going to end a different way for different reasons. And I say that I take this seriously enough that it's a big reason why my husband and I never started a family and had children, because I don't think that they would have a future. So it is a very, very depressing thought. I personally believe that atmospheric and weather-related changes, heat and drought, are going to result in starvation, crop failures, mass migration as people lose their farms and their lands, and the collapse of the world's democracies as frightened people seek security under tyrants. So I don't think the future looks very rosy, but I'm 77 years old, and I just go to my garden and drink my coffee and still read my newspaper. Because gardens are such happy places, and Armageddon is such a bummer. And I have other friends who do the same thing. I have a dear friend who gardens, who retreats to her garden and has made it her bulwark against the world. And I saw her last week, and I said, and she talked about how grim everything was, and I said, we tried and we failed. I mean, I wrote about global warming. I wrote very successfully about the nuclear arms race, and I really helped to promote the freeze. And the New York Times even sent somebody to write about me because I was so successful in that. But they decided there wasn't enough for a story, so it never ran. But I was almost in the New York Times. And so I was very successful with that, and not so successful with global warming. We could not get the editors interested in global warming. They said, you're too far ahead of the story. You're talking about something that's going to happen in 30 years and we'll all be dead, as opposed to nuclear war, which could happen tomorrow. And there's such a timeline with journalism. So I said to her, we failed, but we have our gardens, and we're basically almost about 80 years old, and now we get to shuffle off this mortal coil. So I live in two worlds, as many people do. I live in the world of the happy gardener, and I live in the world of the fatalistic ends time Cassandra. And I think that's true of many people, or maybe everybody, because we all know we're going to die someday. We all know we're not immortal. And yet every day we get up and we act as though we're immortal, and we feel as though we're immortal. So your sense of your own immortality, though you know it's not true, is like what the garden is to me. And I think by encouraging these baby birds to successfully fledge their nestlings, I am continuing life. So the garden is a good place to escape to, and that's and it brings a huge richness to my life, and it has. Professionally, spiritually, emotionally, and my marriage. It's a great thing for my husband and I. We take walks in the garden at sunset, and we listen to the birds and look for the baby birds that are getting fed by their parents. There were some baby catbirds yesterday, or the day before yesterday. I saw a oriole come to the feeder this morning. So anyway, we're very happy, and it helps to make. It really does help with our lives, and I recommend it. Now, I'll be available to answer questions about actual gardening, because I have said nothing that is going to help you with gardening. So if you have questions, come seek me out after the service. I will say quickly that our garden is kind of in quarantine because we're trying not to catch the newest invasive creature, which is Asian jumping worms, which are really spread through soil. And so I haven't bought any plants that are in soil or any mulch, which they're also in, or any soil for about 3 years. So there's like a wall around my garden, an imaginary wall, because I don't want to get the jumping worms. And so I only have in my garden what I can grow from seed, what I can grow from bulbs. They don't have soil attached. My mulch is from trees that I've cut down on my property and hired someone to chip, and that my husband uses. So we're making our own mulch. We make our own soil. In the compost pile, we import nothing. And I think of it as the old idea of we've all done this. You get up one day and you say, I have too many clothes and not enough money. I'm not going to buy any new clothes this year. And then you say, okay, look at all these clothes. I'm going to go shopping in my closet. And then you go in the back of your closet and you find, things that you didn't even know you had. So I'm shopping in my closet in the sense that I look around my garden and I find forgotten, overlooked, shaded out plants, and I dig them up and move them around, and that's part of the quarantine. And the second thing I want to say is watering. Water your trees, not your lawn. Everybody's, irrigates their lawn. That is so stupid. That is such a waste of money, because grass evolved to go dormant during droughts in the summer, and then come back in the fall and green up. And when you're watering it in the summer, you are keeping it active growth artificially. It wants to go to sleep and wake up in September, and you're not letting it go to sleep. So, because you're wasting all this water and fertilizer on it to keep it awake against its will, and you do this partly because the lawn care companies want you to do it so they can keep themselves busy being paid to mow grass that should be dormant. But what you do need to water in the summer is your trees, because unlike your lawn, your trees will die. And they will die in a sneaky way. They will look perfectly okay and through a drought, and then they will die a year later. And you'll wonder why they died. Well, they died because you didn't water them last summer. Grass will not die, trees will die. And your trees are a much more important investment if you care about things like global warming than your lawn. So don't water your lawn, do water your trees. Okay, so any other questions, come and find me afterwards. Thank you very much.
To invite you to rise as you're able and join in singing hymn number 163 in the gray hymnal. Spirit of life, Mother Nature, thank you for reminding us that we are intertwined in something much larger and beautiful and supported by it, even when we can't see the whole picture. Grant us the strength to disrupt our routine ways of thinking and the courage to let go of any sense of control. And may we all learn to love the thistles of our lives. Amen. Today's offering is dedicated to the services and ministry of First Parish. To give, please follow the instructions printed on the card in your pew rack. Please rise as you're able and join in saying the unison dedication, which will be followed by the doxology. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity. And as I extinguish the flame, may our lives be reflections of the beauty, peace, and joy that is possible in the world. And may the love we find in this place sustain us as we go our separate ways. Have a good week, and a reminder that after the postlude, Carol is happy to answer any gardening questions you might have.